WeInfuse Podcast, episode number 38. Welcome to the WeInfuse Podcast. My name is Dylan McCabe, and in every episode, we give you a seat at the table as we talk with infusion center owners and practice leaders and industry experts so that we can give you the tips you need to remove the limits on your own practice. Now, in this episode, I'm going to talk with Kelly Kain. He's had a lot of experience in the industry. He's currently the COO and co-owner of Livwell Infusion, and Livwell Infusions, and they actually own AICs and manage AICs across the nation. He is a top-notch leader. That's going to come across during our interview, but he's really going to dig into some of the key metrics you need to focus on in your business. He's got a no-nonsense approach, and he's also just going to give some real light bulb moments they've had while owning and managing infusion centers. You're going to get a lot out of this. So let's get into this interview with Kelly Kain from Livwell Infusions. All right. As I mentioned, I have a special guest on the show today, Kelly Kain. He's the COO and owner of Livwell. So, Kelly, thanks for joining the show.
Hey, thanks, Dylan. Really appreciate the time. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I was looking forward to this because when I was an account executive with WeInfuse, you guys were one of the first clients that I got signed up in my new role. And it was really cool just knowing what you were doing at the time and the amount of infusions you guys were doing, multiple locations in your experience. So and fast forward to today, a lot has progressed since then. So kind of like to give you a chance to just share with our listeners, who are you, what's your background, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I am a pharmacist by training. So graduated from University of Montana in 2009. Kicked around a variety of different, tried my hand at a few different things: long-term care, government contracting, retail, compounding. Settled in on compounding for a while, and I was at a company that we were expanding. And right before we met you, Dylan, we had gone into specialty pharmacy and grown that out, and done accreditations, kind of done everything we could as an independent pharmacy to put ourselves on the map. And quite frankly, got frustrated that PBMs were still taking our orders. So our sales team was cranking. We were getting good orders. We did everything everybody asked. We had ACHC, we had URAC, we had everything. And we were still getting our orders diverted to Optum and Briova. So we decided that we needed to go about this a different way. And to us, the logical answer was, let's go around the PBMs on this area where buy and bill is not controlled by them, and let's start an infusion division. And we knew of people on the East Coast that had done it. People know the big names in the game on the East Coast. So we knew it was possible, but we literally started from scratch. And this was probably about 6 months before we met you guys at WeInfuse. Really just kicking the tires on what's the best way to do this, what's most efficient, how can we scale this? But it was truly from ground zero. So it's fun to watch it grow and to keep evolving, keep getting better at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you have a military experience as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, good memory. So my dad was in the Air Force for 25 years, so kind of moved all over. My wife has been in the Air Force Reserve for 17 years now, and I have been in the Army Reserve for a little over 8 years now. So we stay busy on our weekends. It's good. We both enjoy it. Glad to serve the country and get a different little look at life. It was funny. I was a pharmacist already, obviously, and had been for a while. I was older when I joined the military. I was about 29 at the time. So going to basic training with 17-year-olds, and all the recruiters are like, you can be a pharmacist in the Army. And it's like, we'll make you captain and it's easy. You don't have to do any of this stuff. And to me, it was just the challenge of doing something new, doing a different occupation. I mean, at the time, I'm like, I get enough pharmacy during my week and I'm plenty busy doing that. I need something different that's going to challenge me. So I entered the reserves went to basic training, then officer school, and then engineer school for 6 months, and was an engineer platoon leader for a while. And then recently I've kicked over to civil affairs, which is a little more specialized, but really enjoy it. Miss my kids when I'm gone, but it's worth it. My wife and I are on the same page with that one.
It's good stuff. Thank you for your service. Really appreciate that. I'm not going to even go off on how much I appreciate the military and people who serve, but really do appreciate your service. And I think it's cool how the experience you had in the military, and even now, I know bridges over into leadership and organizational, leadership and management skills that help your business thrive. So tell us about Livwell. You're an owner and COO at Livwell. So what does Livwell do?
Yeah. So we started Livwell early 2020, right around February, right before COVID hit. So awesome time to start a new business. Awesome time to see what you're really made of as you've got everything geared up, ready to go, and the nation goes on lockdown. So our vision for Livwell, my fellow owners and I, who we were at a lot of the same companies together, is we had observed the changing landscapes of infusion. AICs are popping up. AICs have a great role for alternative sites of care, and are a big piece of our puzzle too. We do those, but we also saw where the larger groups have now realized through good marketing by the good management companies that there's revenue to be had for your patients. If you're a large group, you're a large rheumatologist, you're a large gastro, you're a large neuro group, the odds of them offloading all their patients to you is pretty low. They understand there's a value to the patients. They understand there's a revenue source that could be generated. So as we grew, and our vision was, we can't be one size fit all. We need to be a hybrid, and we need to be adaptable to the market. And certain practices are going to be better for one thing, and some are better for the other. So when we approached Livwell, that was exactly it. We don't want to have a split between what we call MSAs, managed service agreement companies, and AICs that are owned by us. And that's kind of the route we've gone. There's certainly a role for pharmacy in there. People that are in this industry know products like IG and certain other biologics do pay better and are better served on the home infusion front. So that's our third leg that we are just about opening, is a home infusion component that will complement those first two. But yeah, that's how we approach it. We're in the biologic game. We're not antibiotic people. There's nothing wrong with that. But this is the business that we're in, is the biologics, and good timing for everybody with better therapies coming out across a variety of disease states. So yeah, that's Livwell's overarching vision.
Okay, so you guys have got AICs that you own, and you've also got practices that you help manage.
Correct.
So let's clear the fog on that for people listening to this, that maybe it's a provider that owns an infusion practice, a rheumatologist, or maybe even a group. And maybe they've had conversations over the last year or 2 years thinking, maybe we need an MSA. Maybe we need somebody to come alongside and help. If we're to be honest, we're really strong on the clinical side, but it seems like the business side, our limits are in our business acumen, and that's kind of holding us back a little bit. What would you say? What's the one thing that you would say if this is an area of struggle, you may want to consider a conversation with us?
Sure. Yeah. I'll give you two. The two that jump out to me is anyone that's been in a busy doctor's offices. They know the strain that's placed on an MA. An MA is expected to run around all day, take care of the patients, take care of the doctor, take care of this, take care of that. The idea that you're going to ask and trust that MA in the middle of all that to go authorize a potentially $600,000, $500,000 infusion a year and do it successfully and do it right and not ever mess up, I think that's a big ask, and I think that's a likely fail point. I think that's too much to ask of MAs in general. If you have someone that's devoted to just doing authorizations and you're good at it, awesome. That's great. But in general, most offices don't have a devoted person that can sit there and do the painstaking work it takes to authorize an infusion that costs that much money down to the detail where you're confident you're going to get paid. So that's number one. Number two is, do you have the financial carry as a provider or a group to front the money for these drugs, where versus pharmacy, pharmacy, you hit your submit claim button, it shoots off to your clearinghouse and you're getting paid. You get that confirmation, that warm blanket on you. You don't get that in the buy and bill world. It's all what you're doing on the phone and your level of detail and the person you're talking to on the other side. So that's really the two things. Does your staff have the time to do this successfully? And then do you have the confidence in them to carry that financially for, you're looking 20 Ocrevus, you got a big carry on your hands. So those are the two things we approach doctors and say, hey, this is where we think we'd fit in, and kind of start it at that conversation point.
It's interesting you say that, getting into the MA thing. It's such a key, the people component of your business. It's so critical to have the right people in the right seats. And, when I think right seats, that they're in a role that they want, and they've got the capacity to do it. And that's where I think a lot of practice falls short, is they're putting people in a place where they don't have the capacity. And then that creates problems. It creates stress. It creates poor decisions and so on. And then you talk about the other thing, which is cash. I love entrepreneurship and love talking with business owners. And I would think if you were to ask most providers or business owners what's the key financial metric, they're probably going to say revenue or something about gross profit or even net profit, but really it's cash.
Right.
I mean, you can go really far in revenue, but if the cash isn't there, you can end up filing for bankruptcy. So I think it's conversations like that you guys can get people in and pull them into tough conversations, and needed conversations about that is just critical. So that's awesome. I think it's great what you guys are doing. So what would you say is a big thing you've learned about running an infusion center, an AIC, as it pertains to that cash component? What's one key takeaway that you guys have learned so far?
Oh man, yeah, you're speaking my alley. This is when we were doing consulting. We did that kind of in the gap there in 2019. I did a lot of consulting and a lot of startups, even really big companies too. But it all hovers around what I would consider the three big things for AICs. And this will answer your question is, yes, you guys want a nice infusion center. And of course, we're going to take care of patients. That's always the goal, is take care of patients. But if you're looking from a business perspective, you need three things. Did you spend the time, money, and effort on contracting, credentialing to do it right? Because all this is great, but if the payers don't recognize it or you're underwater, you're doing a lot of work for nothing. So that's one. And I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people. Number two, do you have a sales strategy to grow this? This is not a business where you can dabble and get 5-10 patients and be happy and be comfortable and you're going to pay your bills and your overhead that way. It's just not going to happen. If you're either in this or out of this, in my opinion, unless this is just a side gig that's you're kind of, playing around with. But a lot of companies we talked to didn't have a sales strategy. And it differs from, I know home infusion pharmacies, they're great at going to hospitals and they're great at going to dispatch or discharge planners to get the Vancos, to get the Daptos. But that's not this world. You're not getting Remicade, you're not getting Ocrevus, you're not getting Tepezas from the ER and from the hospital, from the discharge. That's your sales team's way misaligned at that point. So do you have a plan, and are you willing to commit money to that plan for a sales training? And then three, operational, like to your cash flow question, who's doing your intake? How good are they at that? Do you understand copay assistance? How does your revenue cycle look? What's your plan to keep your DSO down? Like those are all things that you just can't hope to get into. You need to have a plan before you start. Otherwise, you're just throwing money in the wind here.
That's right. And the dollars are too high to make a costly mistake. There's plenty of other business models where you can make mistakes and get people their money back and do all kinds of things. Man, you can't do that in this line of work.
You're at the big boy table in Vegas here playing. And quite frankly, we've had MSAs in the past, so doctors that they were burned by, quite frankly, it can be just a couple of patients, right? Because if your billing cycle, let's say their billing cycle is 90 days, which I'd say is not very good. You probably have 3 infusions during that period. So you have 3 that are unpaid before you even realize they're unpaid. And how many times did that occur? So the ability to dig a hole very quickly is a challenge in this industry if you don't know what you're doing. So that's where I caution even the people I consulted with, like the most important thing is take care of your money, tighten up this off. If it takes more time, so be it, because you will save money long-term and you'll be much happier, sleep better, because it's all about cash.
So what's your best advice for that? If people have to watch the cash and people have to have, a system in place where they're protecting themselves from getting in over their skis and stuff like that, what's one major piece of advice you would give?
So twofold. I'll probably go reverse order here. And this pertains to doctors as well as AICs and the billers you hire, because you can go online and Google medical billers, and there's a lot of good companies. Maybe in the house you have a really good person that does it, but are they familiar with biologics and the burden that is? This is not coding. This is not an E&M where you lose $100 if you plugged it in wrong. But do you have the familiarity with buy and bill biologics to chase these claims and make them pay you? Because if you did your auth right, they're going to pay you. That's the reality. If you have it done right, they will. But I've seen billers that this just isn't their thing, and they're so used to, hey, we got to crank out X number of claims a day, that they put the same priority weight on a $30 checkup visit as a $30,000 infusion. And that's way offline. You have to zoom back out and say, this one claim is worth 100 to 1,000 fold times that E&M visit. So that's a big thing. I always think billing is very important, and who you partner with, or if you do it in-house, like how do you guide them in that? That's always an important discussion. And I always fall back. Intake is the cream. That is, you can't start this business without that. Sure, you can do Medicare and subs. That's easy. But when you start getting into commercial claims with prior auths, like you need somebody that ideally has done this before. You can't take someone off the street and say, hey, here, go do this for us and expect it to be successful. It's just not going to happen.
That's a good point. And that's one of the things I love about WeInfuse, the software platform, is it dramatically simplifies all that. You're thinking for a biller, for somebody that has to pay attention to a lot of different details, you have very clear red or green lights based on where things are at. You don't have to wonder, oh, wait, where is that in the process? Where is this in the process? It's all in one spot. So I'm not going to camp out.
You alluded to it earlier, and I'll pump you guys up. I'll give you. So for WeInfuse, so we adopted it early in 2015-ish, if my memory's anywhere near right. What a lot of people were doing, and WeInfuse knew this because they built it, they were jimmy rigging other systems to make it work. So whether you were taking a platform, I won't say the name, built for home infusion, and trying to manipulate that to be a infusion center software, not so good, didn't work. Were you trying to take an EMR that exists free on the market and manipulate that? Not so good. So what WeInfuse did is it really, for inventory, I'll back up, for multiple sites especially, inventory management, authorization management, patient management, it put that all on one platform for us so that we were able to scale and we were able to move across state lines and have very good success with it.
It's good stuff. Yep. That's why it's easy to be passionate about it, even as a podcast host, because I know how much it can help people. Anytime you simplify a system, I really feel like one of the top 5 leadership qualities needed to lead well is to simplify. Yep. You're constantly trying to reduce complexity. So that's good stuff. So what would you say, having multiple AICs, and you have a lot of experience with this, and as chief operating officer, you're really trying to systematize, streamline, you're trying to have a really good grip on a well-oiled machine, so that people can be served well, so that patients can be served well. What's one of the biggest challenges you guys have come across? Maybe even a true story where things just went haywire, and then we'll get into what you learned from that.
Yeah, the one that jumps out to me, and I am a big advocate of MSAs. I think it's great to partner. I think a patient that can be served in their prescribing office, I think that's awesome. If they're used to that doctor, they're comfortable with the staff, that most likely is probably the best place. Now, they're lacking the ability to do that, which is good for us. But if you had to pick one spot for the patient to be, I'd say you want them in the neurology office. You want them in the gastro office. But the challenge on the MSA side, and what I always tell my staff is, if they were finely tuned at this, they wouldn't need us. And our expectation that this is as important to them as it is to us is a assumption we need to get rid of. Because to us, this Remicade, this Entyvio, this Xolair is the most important thing happening in that moment and for that day. But the reality is this practice is seeing 100 patients that day, and their MAs are doing this and that, and they're doing labs, they're doing vitals, they're doing everything. That just because it's super important to us doesn't mean it's super important to them, which means that we need to step up and we need to create a process where we take the burden off them as much as possible. So when we go into these, I go in telling my team, hey, expect the worst, expect that there's no organization and that we are going to help them streamline all of this and make this as easy as possible. Not only on the doctor that signed us up, but the MA. Take that lift off them. Take it off the office manager. So I think if you can readjust your mindset about this, if they were functioning perfectly, they don't need us. That's the reality. If they're really good at this, and there's a lot of rheumatology and oncology practices that are very good at this, you're not going to sign them up. This is what they do. They've been doing this for years. But the offices that haven't or have that hesitation, go in expecting that you need to help them simplify their process and streamline this to make their life easier. And then we have a good relationship. It's a partnership at that point. It's not a contract. It's not us and them. We are in partnership with them to serve their patients, and everyone wins.
So when you say if they were really good at this, they wouldn't need us, what do you mean by good at this? What's a scenario? Just if you could think of one practice where you came in and it was a super bumpy process with a lot of things, delays, mistakes that shouldn't have been made. Paint a picture of because some people, providers listening to this may think, I think we're pretty good at this, but I'm not sure. How do you rate somebody on a scale of 1 to 10, or how do you go in and assess just in a real life way? What's almost like a case study of a situation where you guys looked in and saw, wow, they really need some help.
I'd say the easy thing, and this is the good part of biologics is it's chronic, right? So it's every month, it's every 2 weeks for Xolair, it's this or that. are your patients being seen on time? And that's a very easy thing to track, right? And I'm not asking them to dig into KPIs and dig into metrics. I just want to know, did your patient receive the number of infusions that they're supposed to during the course of the year? And normally the answer is no. And then we go into, okay, why is the answer no? If they were supposed to get 12 infusions and they got 10 this year, what's the holdup here? And I can tell you from experience, typically it's an authorization holdup. It's a scheduling holdup. It's a lack of communication with the patient holdup. But there's something in that process where not only you are missing out on doing another 2 infusions, your patient's missing their dose. Now they're behind on schedule, and now their disease state's kicking back into play. So if I sat down with someone and that was the only thing we looked at is, did your patients receive the number of doses they're supposed to within I'll give them a window. Normally the answer is no. And then from there, it's a pretty easy discussion on why it happened. And again, it's we have the time to get these authorizations done. We have WeInfuse. We have some tools on our hands that allow us to track this so that when that auth expires, we already know we're good. That next one's covered. We got you next month. We'll see you. There's no, oh man, we're in a real pinch here. It's 3 months later and they haven't had it. That doesn't happen, So that's the easiest answer to that question, I think.
Okay. So what's a key takeaway from that? If you could tell somebody listening to this, that's an owner, an infusion center, or provider, and you were going to ask them that, are they getting the number of doses in a year or whatever? And they may think, well, yeah, we have a scheduling challenge. You're like, no, you got to know. So what's the number one key takeaway from that?
I've done this. I've opened or helped open 60 or 70 of these now. I've managed as many as that. Here's my answer. You shouldn't have that problem. That's the reality. Like, there is no excuse to me why you can't get someone in 12 out of 12 times or 6 out of 6 times. If you've seen the other side of this, I've seen when it goes bad and I've seen when it goes good. If you do it right, there is no excuse. And I think that would be where I'd start. And it very politely, like, there should never be a time where your patient misses a dose because of something you did. That's just not unacceptable to me. So maybe harsh, but I think they know that. And doctors are too. They're in this for patient care. They want everyone to be better. They don't want the patient to be 2 months behind, but they have a big burden to carry at the practice. You have a big burden to carry at the AIC. You have X number of lives you're taking care of. You shouldn't be missing doses. Like, that's the blunt truth to anybody that wants to do this.
You know what, though? I think to thrive in a practice and in business, you really need that healthy accountability from other business owners. You need to be able to have somebody coming in saying, hey, I think you're doing well over here, but I think this area really needs some improvement. You need somebody that you can bounce ideas off of, somebody you can test your own assumptions off of. And that's kind of part of what you bring to the table. I mean, after working in all the AICs that you have, after being a chief operating officer and a part owner in a business, in an infusion business, you can come in and you can say, hey, here's the bar. You were thinking it might be over here. You got a buddy across town over here. You got another provider in another state over here. They all think the bar is in different places. Here's the bar. We know this. And I think that's really healthy to have kind of a healthy punch in the chest, say, hey, here's what we need to be doing, So that's it.
And you kind of alluded to it. I tell my team and my managers, like, hey, first off, remove the emotion from it. This is a conversation about efficiency. It's not about emotion. It's not about this reason or that reason. But to your points, and this is, some of the Army stuff, I know these big companies pay people and send them to leadership school. I've had better leadership training than just by enlisting in the Army and going to officer school and doing this. And what I gathered out of that in my time in service is we do a lot of 360 feedback. So not only is it important what your boss thinks of you, it's very important what your peers think of you, and then also the people that you manage, what they think of you. And are you able to have that frank discussion, good and bad, with everybody? I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. Same goes to the doctor, but you should be able to have a non-emotional discussion about how to improve something. And I think that's very important for anybody starting a new business out there.
That's so good. Yep. Data-driven discussions. If you have your hand on the pulse of the business side of the practice, then you can make wise decisions and avoid costly mistakes as well. So that's really good stuff. So let's share another story with what you guys have been doing. What was a pivot point where you realized, you know what, we've made a decision to incorporate this practice or this value or this part of that's essential to what we do every single day in our AICs and also as an MSA? What's kind of a light bulb moment you guys had that really improved your path to growth and to success?
I'll give you a good example. This is from a few years ago. We were rocking and rolling the AICs. We had over a dozen open, and we'd gotten to that point where it became very data driven, and this number of patients, this number of treatments, we're doing this, we're doing that. And the bottom line showed it. We were doing very well. But we also had to remember the important part of this when we went into it was to take better care of patients. So when the new ALS drug came out, and this is a number of years ago, Radicava, it's a challenging deal for an AIC. So you're talking, I believe it's the first 2 weeks, they have to come in literally every day. I don't know a lot of AICs that are open 7 days a week. I don't know a lot of nurses that want to work 7 days a week. The medication, if you have ALS, the odds are you are probably on Medicare disability, or you're on Medicaid because how financially challenging that disease state is. And we made the decision that we were going to take every single Radicava patient that came our way. And that really reinforced our employees that it's not all about the money. It's not all about how fast can you get this authorized. Like, these are true patients that most of them passed away. I'm sure all of them have passed away by now, unfortunately. But this is a very people-driven world too. And we can't just look at the numbers. You need to zoom back out and realize, why did you start this business to start with? And that one for me and for all our employees was like very impactful. I'm sure we lost money long-term, and it's fine. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was totally worth it for us as a company and as a team to take that challenge on.
That's good. I think that's what causes pretty much everybody to get into this type of practices. It really is a people-centered practice. It's a people-centered approach to what you do every day. You're dealing with people with chronic diseases, and you're helping them. You're a big part of their lives. And that's what it was so impressive to me, coming into the world of infusion from the outside, and realizing that a lot of these people spend hours in an AIC once a month or once every 2 weeks or whatever. They become like family. And that comes through in a lot of the podcast interviews we do, that a lot of the people we have on, that you can tell that's their heartbeat. They are all in on the patients. I mean, we had one podcast interview where the person I interviewed even talked about giving one of her kidneys to her patients. Wow. I mean, we're talking about being all in to change people's lives.
Yeah.
So knowing that's critical, that's the core, that's got to be the heart, is it's all about the people. At the same time, if you don't get the business stuff really rein tight, you can't serve the people. You can't really focus on the people. And so it's both, it's got to be both. So I just think that's
I'll piggyback that. The AICs, and we've had them, obviously a lot of places, and it's not always possible for our intake team, the one that really deals with these people daily and hourly, they're spending a lot of hours with these people. It's not always possible for them to stop by, wave, say hi. But I know for each and every one of them, to a person, they'd say the ability for when someone is in the office just to come by, now this is pre-COVID, come by, wave, say hi, say, hey, nice to meet you. I'm glad we got this all figured out. Each of them would say to a person that's very, very important. And one of the best parts of working at an AIC is the ability to see this thing all the way through. And at the end of the day, the patients get an infusion, everybody's happy, and we move on. Like you said, we do it again.
It's good stuff. So knowing what you've been through so far and where you guys are at with Livwell, what are you excited about as far as the next 3 to 5 years in infusion, knowing what's headed our way with your experience? What are you looking forward to?
So we joke, or I don't know if it's even a joke. In AICs, I'll exclude MSAs to some degree. There's a little more complexity there. AICs remind me of 2015, 2016. I remember going to the Assembia Specialty Pharmacy Conference in Vegas, and it was this big deal. Everybody's there. All the specialty pharmacies are there. It's a real showcase of who has money and who doesn't. But it was like the buzzword of the day. Like, man, like this was a conference for pharmacy, but everybody, all they could talk about was specialty pharmacy, specialty pharmacy, specialty pharmacy. And you left there, and we'd been doing it for a while. And the two takeaways was you're a couple years behind, and do you really understand what that means? And I kind of feel that way about AICs. I mean, I get calls all the time. We've stopped doing consulting. We did it for a while, but I want to get in this industry. And so it's a heart to heart of like, how much are you really willing to get into this? I think it's great. The more sites, the better. There's plenty of business. There's $100+ billion industry. So I'm never worried about competitors. But the part that excites me is, are you able to see the challenges of the marketplace? Are you able to evolve? Are you able to create hybrid models like MSAs to make this work? Are you willing to put a pharmacy in to really complete the loop? Like that whole thought process of like, I'm going to put 2 AICs down. I'll tell you right now, like that would not satisfy me as a person intellectually or as a business person. I want the challenge of we want to grow this and we want to be the best at it. Now, how do we do that? And it's not one size fit all. It's not, hey, do this over and over again. There's some things that have to change by state, by region, by market. That part I love. I love the adaptability, and I love where this industry is going, where everyone's aware that this is a very critical piece of our infrastructure. Now, how do you do it the best? And that's what I like. That efficiency is what I like.
That's so good. Yep. You focus on solutions and helping people do better, helping practices get better. That is exciting. And there's a positive, really positive motivation there. So Kelly, I'm sure there's going to be some people that listen to this and think, I'd really like to tap into Kelly's knowledge a little bit more. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about Livwell?
Yeah, no, that's great. I'll shout out to Reese, and Reese is like the network king of infusion. So he normally puts me in contact with people. But please, everyone, if you hear this and you want to talk, like love meeting new people in the industry, love networking. But Kelly, Kelly, at Livwell, Livwell, infusions with an S. We like to do more than one.com. Kelly at livwellinfusions.com. Reach out. Love to network. Love to meet people across the country. So we're passionate about this, and we like meeting fellow people that are that way too.
Good stuff. And of course, if you're driving somewhere and listen to this, just Google Livwell Infusions. And of course, you can listen to this podcast again, and Kelly gives out his email at the very end. So Kelly, thank you so much for being on the show, man. It's a pleasure.
Hey, really appreciate you having me. Thank you for letting us on. That was awesome.
All right, great interview with Kelly. I really like what he dove into with systems, especially. Are you seeing your patients on time? Are they getting seen on time, and are they getting all the treatments that they should get in a given year? And if not, there's actually probably multiple things going on. I really like his no-nonsense approach, his attention to detail, and at the same time, the passion to make the patient first. So if you want to learn more about Kelly, you can just Google Livwell Infusions. And I like that he also gave out his personal email. And if you haven't done so already, you need to do yourself a favor and schedule a call with one of the WeInfuse account executives and see what the software platform can do with you. It is the only tailor-made solution built by infusion center operators and managers for infusion center operators and managers. You will be blown away. I guarantee it. All right, guys, this is Dylan McCabe with the WeInfuse podcast, and I will catch you in the next episode.